and get started. Let's see. Okay, we are ready.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelsey. And it's great to see everyone tonight. Thanks for joining us. And like Kelsey mentioned, we're going to talk about the state livestock nomination process. And so it's for those of you that are interested in showing at a state show, and maybe this year or maybe in the future. So if you don't think you're quite ready yet to go to one of the state shows, you'll know what to expect in the future when it's time to take that big step. And for everyone this year, it's been a learning curve because we've transitioned to an online nomination process to open up some more opportunities for families and just to meet some of the needs that they've been requesting the last few years. And so I have a few slides that we're going to go through, and then at the end we're going to go through some examples so you can actually see what the process looks like. And we'll talk a little bit about show entry as well, because that is separate from the nomination process, and then wrap up by answering any questions that you may have. And please feel free, I'm going to go ahead and say it now, put your questions in the chat at the end. We'll go ahead and address those questions that maybe aren't in the chat. And then if there's something that you think of as you're discussing it tonight or the next few days, do not hesitate to reach out to me either through calling me or via email and ask those questions. Would rather you ask 100 questions now and get it right when you submit your nominations than us have to return everything because you didn't do anything right because you were just afraid to ask those questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So the state livestock nomination process is just what we call the formal process that you need to use to nominate your market or commercial animals to be eligible for the state shows. And when we talk about the state shows in Kansas, we're talking about two. The first one being the Kansas State Fair Grand Drive, and the second one being the Kansas Junior Livestock Show, or KJLS. I know it can sometimes be confusing, especially with the state fair, that their youth show actually has a special name called the Grand Drive. So just make sure when you're looking up information, either through the state fair or even if you're looking up their Facebook page, because both of them have great social media presences online, that you're looking for the Grand Drive, and then you'll know you're in the right place for the youth show. We work with both shows as a group and as a collaborative effort to make things go smoothly. And as part of K-State's partnership with both shows, we actually facilitate the nomination process. So we work with both shows to determine what that process looks like. And then we actually facilitate opening all of that mail when we get it and answering questions from families. And then we'll actually be at the shows to help those show staff answer any questions about those nominations that were turned in earlier in the summer. And Kansas is unique in that you get to nominate through one place, which is K-State. So you send your nominations through me, and then you're eligible for both shows. So it helps out families that you can go through one point of contact and then decide later which show or shows you'd like to participate in. In some other states, you have to nominate for each specific show you want to show in. So if they have 2 or 3 shows, then you have to nominate through every single show to be eligible. So that's something that's really beneficial to Kansas families in the setup that we have of how we handle things here in Kansas. Nomination only makes livestock projects eligible to be shown, and it is a multi-step process. A complete nomination is not a show entry. They are separate. So think of it like you guys, when you enroll in 4-H in the fall, you have to enroll to become an official member. And then you also have to enter your exhibits in the fair. Just because you're a 4-H member, you can't bring cookies and a pig and an arts and crafts project. You can't just show up at the fair. You actually have to enter. And so likewise, you can't enter the fair if you're not a 4-H or FFA member. And so think of the state shows as how you handle your county enrollment and your county fairs, just on a much larger scale. So nomination is the process for making those animals eligible. It basically says we have these livestock projects that we're going to take care of and learn from throughout the year, and we want the chance to show them at either the state fair or the junior livestock show or both. And so you nominating them lets everyone know, and it's a formal process that you're identifying those animals, that you have them and you're interested in showing them later. The nomination materials have been released and they can be found on our website or through your local extension office. And for you parents out there, or some of those older members, I'd highly encourage you to bookmark our website. And if you have trouble finding it, if you actually just Google KSU Youth Livestock, it'll take you to our page. And the nomination information tab is the tab that's on the top on the right side. And that's the one that I would bookmark, because everything related to the nomination process, including all the resources and links that you need, we post on that page. And I actually have the permissions to update it. And so that is the most up-to-date resource that you can find, is that page. This year, we have moved to an online system. So for those of you that nominated before, there's no more paper forms that you have to fill out or take to the extension office to get signed. You actually are purchasing DNA envelopes online through ShowWorks, and that's how you're actually paying your nomination fee now. In order for us to still have family nominations and families not be financially penalized for having more than one child in their family, the best way for us to do that is through you purchasing a DNA envelope, and you need to purchase one for each animal that you want to nominate. And then after that, as many kids as you have in your family can actually nominate that animal. So they're going to sign that DNA, and that animal is going to be under their name. So any child in your family can show that animal as long as it's a complete nomination under your name. Also, with you paying the nomination fee up front for the DNA envelope, you don't have to send any money through cash or check when you mail your nomination. So that'll be a big change. You won't have to remember if you put a check in the mail with those DNA envelopes. You're going to submit the information for each animal and each exhibitor online via ShowWorks. So the same link that you go to purchase those DNA envelopes is where you're going to go to actually put your animal information. And that includes their tag number, breed, and then some secondary identifying information that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Then you're going to mail those completed and signed DNA envelopes with a copy of your submission receipt to our office here on campus. And we're going to process those in the order in which they are received. So we'll open them up and make sure that everything matches on the receipt you have that's in our system, and also that your DNA is complete, that everyone has signed it and it matches the information we have online. And then extension agents and FFA advisors are going to approve nominations online. So instead of you making an extra trip to the extension office, they're going to actually be logging on and approving your nominations on the internet. There are still a couple of forms that are required for nominations this year. The first being the declaration form. And this is the form that a lot of people also know as the housing form that let us know all the people that are in your family, and also what animals you have and where you're going to house them. And so that's when you tell us if you have them at your house, or maybe you have them at grandma and grandpa's house. Because if you live in town, chances are they're not going to let you keep a market steer or a pig in your backyard. So usually you have to find somewhere else, whether it's grandma and grandpa's house or an aunt and uncle's, and you're going to tell us where that animal is kept. And if you are someone that keeps that animal somewhere else that's not at your primary residence, then you're going to let us know how you care for that animal. It's understood that this is a youth project, and so the kids are taking care of these projects from the time that the nomination deadline starts and from the time those animals were tagged. And so you're going to tell us how those kids are taking care of those animals. You can just fill out one form for your entire family. You don't need to fill out a separate form for each kid in the family. As long as everyone signs it and it has all of the species that you're going to show on there, and then a parent or legal guardian has signed it, then you're good to go. And you're just going to upload that form for each kid. It's going to be the same form that you can upload for each child. The other piece of documentation you're going to need is the Yqca certificate. Yqca is a national livestock quality assurance program for youth that is required by both shows. And so the kids are going to need to go through that before you can nominate any animals. And when they're done, they'll get a completion certificate that'll give a certification number and when that certificate expires, which is 1 year from the date that they took the training. So those have to be renewed annually. And once you have your new certificate for this year, then you're going to upload it under each child, and the system will prompt you to do that. It's going to be really important this year more than ever that families plan ahead and have your documents handy. Unfortunately, the system is only going to ask you once to upload your documents. And so once it asks you and you upload something, then you can't go back and edit it or upload additional documents. So you need to make sure that you have both your declaration form and your Yqca certificate ready before you actually start putting animals under each exhibitor in the family. The deadlines are really important for the nomination process. These are very strict and firm deadlines that there is no negotiation on. If you don't meet these deadlines, then you won't be allowed to participate. Now that you're ordering DNA envelopes directly, we do have a DNA envelope order deadline, and that was yesterday. So April 24th for market beef, and then June 8th for small livestock. Now, I will tell you that the mail has been pretty erratic in that some people are getting their DNA really quickly. And for some people, it's taking a couple of weeks to get their envelopes from the time they ordered them. And so you are encouraged to order them as soon as possible. The earlier you can order them, the better, and the less stress it's going to be on you worrying about when your DNA envelopes are going to arrive. So as soon as you have an idea how many animals you're going to nominate, go ahead and order them. And I'll show you how you can skip ahead in the system and just order DNA envelopes without having specific tag numbers. And then that'll take a lot of stress off later. I will tell you also that if you get extra DNA envelopes, you can use them in the future. So it's not like you're just wasting that money if you order one or two too many and you don't end up having that many animals. You'll be able to use them next year. Or you can also, if there's a family that's running short, you can transfer them to another family in your area as well. Also, prior to the nomination deadline, everyone is going to submit their information online. And so that's going to be May 1 for market beef and June 15th for the small livestock and commercial heifers. And when I talk about submitting your information online, if you already ordered your DNA envelopes, that means you're going to log back into the system and make sure that you've created an account for each kid, and then you're going to start putting in all the animals you have under each kid. And that includes their tag numbers, that includes their breeds, and then their secondary ID. So all the identifying information about those animals is what you're going to put online. And then you're going to print out a receipt of all that information, and you're going to mail it with your completed DNA envelopes that are signed by all the kids in your family. Once again, we're still doing family nominations in the state of Kansas, so you need to make sure that all the eligible kids in your household sign those DNA envelopes, as well as a parent or legal guardian. And then you're just going to mail those completed DNA envelopes back to us, along with the receipt that shows all the animals that you uploaded in the system. The deadline is May 1 for market steers and market heifers, and that's a postmark deadline, which means the visible date on the top of that envelope as it goes through the postal service needs to read May 1 or before. And then June 15th for market hogs, commercial gelts, market lambs, commercial ewes, market meat goats, breeding does, and then commercial heifers are on June 15th as well. I highly encourage you to use certified mail when you're postmarking these DNA envelopes, because you've gone to a lot of effort and financial investment in getting these animals nominated, and it's going to take even more to care for them throughout the summer. And so certifying them helps make sure they get here, A. B, also shows proof of mailing. If something happens and they never arrive, we'll be able to work with you as long as you have official proof from the post office, that being a receipt, that you mailed them on the day that you thought that you mailed them. The other thing I would mention is, again, you're going to a lot of effort to get these nominations completed, you and the kids. And so you need to make sure that when you're mailing them, you walk them into the post office and give them to a real life breathing person. There's a lot that can happen if you just drop it in the general mail bin. It can get stuck. It could not get postmarked on the correct day. And so making sure that you hand it to a live person is going to help alleviate any of that stress and make sure that you meet that postmark deadline. If you're cutting it close, you can also ask them to round date it. And that means when you hand it to them over the counter, they have a stamp that they can stamp it the actual day that you turned it in. Because depending on where your postal service is located and the hours that they run, sometimes even though you walk it in on, let's say, April 30th, it may not get postmarked until May 2nd, depending on when that envelope is put on the truck and goes either Wichita or Kansas City, or for some people even goes to Lincoln or North Platte, Nebraska. And so making sure that it's a round dated, as long as that round date meets the postmark date, then you're going to be good and everything is going to be fine. So starting out with step one of the nomination process, that's going to be making sure that your animal is tagged for the state fair and the junior livestock show with a Kansas 4-H EID tag. And that's placed in the ear by the agent. And those EIDs this year, we realized that there is a tagging shortage. And so the EIDs have been prioritized to only animals that are going to be state nominated. And so you have to have an EID if you're going to go to the state fair or junior livestock show. If you haven't let your local extension office know that you would like to state nominate, you need to do so immediately. That's going to allow them to make sure that they're going to have enough tags to cover your animals. If you do not communicate with them, then there's a chance they won't have enough tags and you won't be able to nominate all the animals that you would like to. One of the most important parts to getting smoothly through the nomination process is that open communication with your local extension office and your agent. They can help answer a lot of your questions and help guide you in the right direction. And they also can forward reminders that I send out. If you're not on our mailing list, they a lot of times will forward those to the families who have let them know they're interested. And so having that open communication as early as possible is only going to help you get through this process. Next, you're going to submit your nomination information online. And actually, these next two steps can be inverted. If you want to order your DNA envelopes first to make sure that you get them in time, you can order them first. But one of the steps is submitting your nomination information online, like we talked about a little bit ago. And if you have more than one child in your family, we highly encourage you to create a quick group rather than just create their account as an exhibitor. Having a quick group will allow all the exhibitors in your family to be shown under one account. And it also means you can pay for everyone at the same time and also see all of your receipts in one location. So it makes things a lot more convenient if you use a quick group for your family. You're going to submit a nomination entry for each animal under each exhibitor in your family. And I know it can get a little confusing that we talk about show entry and we're also talking about nomination entries. When we're talking about an entry for the nomination process between now and June 15th, we are talking about a specific animal that your child could take and show in the ring. So we're referring to that animal that you want to be eligible. When we talk about show entry later, that's the process of saying, we are coming to your show. We want to order a t-shirt. Have scheduled our rooms. We're going to be there. And so those are two separate processes. So I want to clarify that in the nomination process, it's also called an entry when you're putting in a specific tag number. You're going to upload your completed declaration form on Yqca Certificate, and you are still going to need your KSU family name and number. So everyone has an official name and a 5-digit family number that their family is used to refer to as. And if this is your very first year and you've never nominated before, then you're going to need to request a number. And it actually is going to take between 1 and 3 days for us to be able to get that number back to you. And you have to have that number to order your envelopes, because we're keeping track of where all the envelopes go for families across the state. And so if you haven't requested that number, go ahead and do that now. And then tomorrow we'll be able to send you your nomination number so you'll be able to order DNA envelopes. If you have nominated previously, but you don't remember your number or your name, there is actually a list posted online. So if you go to that nomination information page, you will see that there's a link that's called Family Names and Nomination Numbers. And if you look on there under your county, you'll find your name and number. And that's the name and number you need to use on all of your materials. When you purchase your official DNA envelopes, that needs to be done once again by the deadline. And when you get those DNA envelopes in the mail, you are going to pull a DNA sample from each animal you are going to nominate. And that is how we identify those animals. And notice that it says pull. You cannot cut the hair and it be a valid sample. It has to be pulled and it has to have the hair follicle intact. So if you hold that hair up to the light, either in the barn or if you're outside, hold it up to the sun. And if you can see the hair follicle on the end of that hair sample, then you're good and it's going to be a valid sample. And you need to have at least 40 hairs for each sample in order for it to be valid. And you're going to stick it in that envelope and then seal it and have everyone sign it. There are instructions on our website in both a PDF version as well as videos that are from the DNA company if you would like some more guidance on getting an appropriate sample. But it's really important that you double check the ear tag before you pull that DNA sample and make sure you're putting it in the right envelope and that all kids in the family sign the envelope as well as a parent or legal guardian. The next step is you're going to mail your completed DNA envelopes and a copy of your nomination submission receipt by the postmark deadline. And once again, we talked about certified mail and how important it is to help make sure that they make it here and you have proof of mailing. And it does cost a little extra, but it's usually between $4 and $8 for that extra peace of mind that it's going to make it. And that if it doesn't, you have proof you mailed it, so we can work with you on resolving that. That postmark deadline is firm. If it is off by a day, if it's late by a day, we will send it back. We do not accept late nominations. Extension agent and FFA advisors are going to approve your nominations online. And it's really important that when you are putting your nominations into the system, that when you pick your club means your county or your FFA chapter. So don't be looking for your specific club that you're in. For example, when I was in 4-H, I was in the Harmony Sunflowers 4-H club in Greenwood County. You don't look for Harmony Sunflowers, you'd be looking for Greenwood County. Or if you are an FFA, you're looking for your specific FFA chapter. And putting it under the right club is how your extension agent or ag teacher is going to be able to see your nominations online to approve them. And their approval has the same implications as if they would have signed their paperwork. Just like when you're filling out your nominations in the system, you'll be asked to type the word yes and agree to a digital signature. And that has the same implications as if you would have signed your paper forms and were mailing them in. Once you mail them to us and we receive them in our office, we open them in the order in which they are received. So the earlier you send them to us, the earlier they get opened in our office. And you will get a confirmation letter back in the mail letting you know that we received them and if you have any corrections. So if we find something that's missing, we will let you know and give you an opportunity to fix that. Now, it does cost an extra fee. There is a penalty for turning in an incomplete nomination, but you aren't completely out and unable to show. We give you the opportunity to make those corrections in a specific window of time. Usually that time limit is 1 month that you are given to make those corrections. And you'll be told that in the letter. It's really important that if you find a mistake, that you get that corrected as soon as possible, because if you just ignore it or assume that it's only wrong on your end and we have it correct on our end, that would be an incorrect assumption. Whatever you get back in your confirmation letter and whatever is on your submission receipt is what is taken as official. And so if you find something that's incorrect, you need to let me know as soon as possible, because we really need to get that changed before you get to the show. Otherwise, it's too late to correct it, and there's a chance you may not get to show depending on what it is. And believe me, the last thing myself or anyone affiliated with the state shows want to do is kick a kid out. Most of the people that work at the shows are volunteers. They're there because they love the livestock industry. Most of them, their kids showed and they loved having that family time and having that experience with their families. And so they just want to pass that on to other families. And so they're truly volunteers. And the last thing they want to do is have to kick someone out because they didn't follow the rules or pay attention. And so I ask that you please, when you get your confirmation letter back in the mail, double check it to make sure everything looks correct and is what you thought it was. Including all the animals that you thought you nominated. Make sure that they're all listed on that letter, because if they aren't, it means they're not in our system and we need to get that corrected. Once it's time to mail your materials, this year you're only going to mail 2 things. You're going to mail your DNA envelopes that have been signed by all the kids and a parent or legal guardian, and also your official submission receipt. So you can see that on that slide. On the left is what the new DNA envelopes look like. You'll also notice that that's where you're going to put your barcode sticker now. So in previous years, you put that on the form, and since we don't have the form anymore, we still need it. And so you're going to put that on your DNA envelopes. We're going to go through some of the secondary identification information that's going to be asked of you as you nominate these animals. And in previous years, a lot of this information was requested that you put it in the lower right-hand corner of those DNA envelopes, but unless you read the instructions, it was hard to see that you were supposed to be including that information. So now, since we had to redesign the envelopes anyways, it has that information on there. So there's a place for you to write that secondary information actually on the envelope. The first we're going to talk about are with registered steers and heifers, and that is their tattoo. So we would consider our tattoo a secondary form of identification to their 4-H ear tag number. And the tattoo must match the registration papers or breeder certificate if you're going to show in a breed. So if you're showing a purebred Angus steer, you have to have a set of papers with a tattoo that matches what's in the animal's ear, and you need to submit that information through the nomination process. It is optional for cattle, but you need to make sure that everything checks out and that that tattoo is correct and legible before you actually go to the state show. Otherwise, you will not get to show in that breed class. It is also required if you're showing registered breeding heifers, you actually don't have to nominate purebred breeding heifers as long as you have papers in the exhibitor's name by the ownership deadline. You don't have to nominate, for example, a purebred Hereford heifer. You get to skip us and go straight to entry because they show off of their registration papers. However, it's vitally important that the tattoo in her ear matches what's on the papers and matches what you use when you actually enter that heifer for the show. We do encourage families to double check and make sure that what's on their papers is actually what's in the heifer's ears. There have been times at the show that someone will show up and it doesn't match, or there's no tattoo in their heifer's ear at all. They submitted for papers, the information had been submitted correctly, but no one actually tattooed that heifer. And so you need to make sure that everything lines up before you actually go to the show to save yourself some heartache later. And I actually encourage families to have either a beef leader do it or your local veterinarian. You need to have someone that's not familiar with that heifer do it, just because they're more inclined to have an unbiased eye. If you're the one that tattooed that heifer, you may skew a letter or a number thinking, oh, that looks close. But when they read it at the show, they don't read it the same way you do. If you have an unbiased third party read it, chances are they're going to be able to tell you how legible that tattoo is. Next is ear notches for swine. I know that this is a little bit of a talent and takes some math practice in order to read ear notches, but it's really important for kids in the swine project to learn this life skill. If they're going to be involved in the swine industry, then they're going to need to learn to read ear notches, which are required for any pig that's going to be shown in a state show. And we have some resources available in the Rookie Guide and on our website that help guide you through reading these ear notches. They are going to be submitted in the online system, but this year you don't have to submit a diagram or a picture. In previous years, you had to both give us the number and draw it out on a diagram. And this year we're just requesting the number, but that also means it's really important that you get that number right. And so if you need help, your extension agent is a great resource to help you, as well as the breeder or whoever it is that you purchase that pig from. They can help you read those notches. Sheep and meat goats have a scrapie tag. They have to have one when you purchase them from the breeder, and that number is required as well for their secondary ID. We do require that you turn in the full number, which includes the flock ID and the individual animal number. And as you can see on the slide, the flock ID is that number that starts with the KSS number, and all the lambs that come from one producer will have the same flock ID, but then their individual animal number, or on this example, the 16121, is going to be different for every animal. And as you can see on the right, I have some examples of tags that are of scrapie tags, and where the bottom number is going to be different for every animal, and that top number is going to be the same for everyone from a producer. And we actually need both of those parts of the number in order for it to be complete. If you only give us one or the other, we'll return it to you as incomplete, and you're going to have to redo it and go through the incomplete process. So make sure that you provide us with the full number. Those green tags I have a picture of on this slide also are an example of a custom farm tag. There are some producers that have their own tags made, and so it says their farm name on them. We need the actual flock ID, which again is a great life skill to have if you're going to be in the sheep and meat goat industry, is learn how to read those tags and what the numbers mean. And if you flip that tag over, there is a 99% chance that the flock ID is actually on the back of that tag. So if you don't see that first set of numbers that would correspond to the state and their flock ID, then flip it over and you're going to find it there. And once again, we have resources available both in our rookie guide and on our website for reading those scrapey tags. Here are some tips and resources for you to help you through the nomination process. The first one being the website, which we spoke about at the beginning. It's probably the most important resource that you have because everything related to the nomination process is right there on the website. The second one is the rookie guide, which has been updated this year to correspond to our new online process. And we're actually encouraging all families this year to use that rookie guide to guide you through the process. I do realize that when you open it up, it looks really long because it's about 100 pages in length, but we do have a table of resources or table of contents if there's a certain section that you're looking for. And also the reason that it is so long is because there's lots of examples in there as well as screenshots. So you can follow along to what you should be seeing on your computer screen as you go through and put your nominations in. The third one on the right is the species checklist. We still have continued to do the checklist. It's just been modified for the online system. And so if you use that checklist, your nominations are going to be complete. For a checklist, it's really detailed, but that's to help you make sure that you don't miss any details. And finally, there is an incomplete fee of $20 if we have to return any of your nominations or you have to resubmit any information to us. It's going to cost you basically like a speeding ticket for missing something through the process. The updates for this year are pretty significant. The first one being that we have moved to an online nomination system and that there are new DNA envelopes that we've talked about previously. Now, these new DNA envelopes are required. If you have old DNA envelopes, you need to dispose of them. They will not be acceptable and your nominations will be incomplete and we'll send them back and you'll have to resubmit. So make sure that you are purchasing a new DNA envelope for each animal that you plan to nominate. In order to facilitate having an online system and you being able to pay online, the cost has increased to $12 an animal. There's a ShowWorks Passport app, which is a companion app that goes with the ShowWorks program that we're highly encouraging all families to use. And this allows you to manage multiple entries and exhibitors across multiple shows. So the bonus to us using ShowWorks now is that once that animal's in there, if you plan to take that same animal to Denver or go to the Royal, that animal is already in your account and you can quickly add them to another show. You can also enable notifications through this app and we can send you direct messages either individually or we can send them to a whole group of people, or the show could release class lists or let you know when the beef show is getting ready to begin. But it opens up the possibilities for us to be able to communicate directly with you and to your mobile device. The declaration form has been updated. For those of you that have nominated before, you'll notice that it no longer requires an agent or FFA advisor signature, and that's so you can fill it out in-house and go ahead and upload it and submit it directly into the system. And I will say there's a couple of ways that you can fill out that form. If you want to just print it out and fill it out and then take a picture of it and send it to yourself to be uploaded, you can do that. Or you can fill it out online. We will accept a digital signature as long as it is an official digital signature, which requires that you have an email address. So if you have young kids, it's probably going to be best for you to print it out for them to sign themselves and then either scan it back in to be uploaded, or again, you could take a picture of it and send it to yourself as long as the picture is clear. They are adding some breeds to the state fair this year and the junior livestock show, and that would be the Berkshires, the Poland, the Spot, and the Spots have been separated from the dark AOBs. So this year you will have the opportunity to select that as your breed instead of just selecting dark AOB as the breed for those animals. We have worksheets available on our website, and you'll notice they look really similar to what the old paperwork looked like. And these are only to be used as a guide for people that are visual when it comes to putting in information online. So we will not take these in lieu of you submitting your information online, and you cannot mail them in with your DNA, but they're just to be used as a guide for you to make a master list if you want to list before you sit down at your computer and put all of your information in. And finally, the Yqca certification is required and it is continuing for all exhibitors. As we talked about before, this is an annual certification. So a youth certification has to be good through October 2nd of 2022 for us to accept it. If it expires before then your nomination will be incomplete and you will have to make sure that child goes through the training and then resubmit your nominations. So go ahead and do that now. If you haven't done that, then you need to do that as soon as possible, because you have to have that certificate to get through ordering your DNA envelopes and submitting your nomination. So you need to get through it you need it for several steps in the process. So the sooner you do it, the better off you'll be. It does include 7-year-olds, and so they will be able to get their own certificate and their own number. Make sure that you have that certificate downloaded and handy before you start entering animals. It's really important to understand that show entry is separate from livestock nomination. Having a complete nomination does not constitute an entry. They are two separate processes. The first one, nomination, is through us, and then each show is independent. So you have to enter the show in which you would like to participate in. So after you get your letter back saying your nominations are good and you're all set to show, then you need to go and enter the grand drive or enter the junior livestock show, or both if you want to participate in both. While we cannot endorse any specific business, I do like to use the example of Walmart and Target here. So you can think of the state fair as Walmart and the junior livestock show as Target. That just because you have an online account for both of them and you have Apple Pay, if you do not submit an order through each store, you can't just drive to that store and assume that they will have your items there to purchase. You have to actually pick what you want to buy, pay for them, and then you go to the store. So you can think of that as entering the state fair and then entering the junior livestock show separately. They are separate entities. And so if you want to show them both, you have to submit your entries and pay the fee for both. They are 3 completely separate processes. You do have to enter online. That's one of the reasons that we're using ShowWorks as our online platform for nominations, is because both of the shows have been requiring online entry through ShowWorks for the last several years. So once you nominate, then you already have your login information, and it'll be really quick for you just to log back in through that show's website, and each of them will have unique entry links. So you'll need to go to their website and use their link to actually enter, but your information from nomination, so your child's name, the email, the password that you use to set up their account, will work for you to quickly log in and enter what you would like to actually exhibit. This information can also be found through your extension offices and the show's social media accounts. The Kansas State Fair is going to be September 9th through the 18th, with the grand drive being the 9th through the 11th, and entries are due July 15th. So that's the deadline for you actually to submit your show entries for that show. And then the Junior Livestock Show is the 30th of September through October 2nd, with a entry deadline of August 15th. I like to tell parents, especially new families, that the 15s are really important in the summer. If you're showing beef, you got to nominate those by May 1 before your kids even get out of school. And then once they get out of school, June 15th is the nomination deadline for small livestock. July 15th is the state fair entry deadline. August 15th is the KJLS entry deadline, and then you go back to school. So set your calendar, set a reminder in your phone of about the 10th of the month, all during the summer, so you don't miss any of those important deadlines. And with that, I'll go ahead and entertain any questions you have for now. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the system as well so we can go through an example.
If you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, or you can also unmute to ask your question.
No questions? All right, we'll go ahead and do an example then.
Okay, Lexi, one quick question. Actually, we've got two so far.
Okay.
Can they hand deliver their nominations?
Yes, you absolutely can hand deliver them. You just need to come during business hours. We won't be here really late at night. And so you can absolutely hand deliver them if that's what you would like to do. And also, I've had several families this week that are actually picking up their DNA envelopes by hand. And so if you're going to be in the area, especially if you show small livestock and you're going to be coming to Manhattan for an activity before the deadline when you have plenty of time to go ahead and pull your DNA, or you're needing them soon, you're welcome to pick them up as well. You just still have to do the online part. So if it's DNA envelopes, you still have to order them online and go ahead and pay, and then just send me an email and let me know when you're going to be in town and you'd like to pick them up in person, and I will have them ready for you to pick up. And I'll even have you call me and I'll run them down so you don't have to deal with the parking police on campus. So you can do both your DNA envelope pickup and then also dropping them back off as well.
Okay, and then the next question is, do dairy exhibitors need a YQCA certificate to show at the state fair?
That is a question for the dairy superintendent at the state fair. To this point, they have not been requiring it, but dairy is a species that is included in YQCA. And so that's something I would check with the dairy superintendent about, because that is separate. The dairy is not part of the Grand Drive shows, and you don't have to nominate dairy. That is a separate qualification process. And so I would talk to the dairy superintendent or your extension office. They would be able to tell you as well if that is going to be a requirement this year.
And I think I can provide a good answer for that.
Okay.
Something has changed within the last couple months. Dairy exhibitors are not required a YQCA certificate. However, I would encourage all of our 4-Hers to participate in the YQCA program because it's a great learning opportunity. One other question for you, Lexi. Actually, 2 questions. Nikki says she already sent in her kid's declaration form through the ShowWork system, but typed her name and doesn't have a signature by hand. How does she resubmit that with a signature?
You just need to redo it and then email it to me. Unfortunately, that is one hiccup in the system, is that once you submit it, it takes it as final. And so you cannot go back in and edit that. But if you will email it to me, I can edit it. I can upload it on your behalf on our side. So just send me an email with the final version that you would like, and I will replace the one that's already in the system. And you also need to tell me the kids that are in your family and the county that you're from, so I can make sure to get it to the right place.
And do registered heifers have to have a 4-H ear tag?
To show at the state shows, no, not if they are registered. Commercial heifers do. They have to be nominated just like you would nominate a market animal. But if you are showing a registered breeding heifer and you're only showing her in the breeding show, you don't want to show her as a market heifer, then a 4-H tag is not required. However, you need to talk to your local extension office, because if you also plan to show her at the local level, there are some counties that require all animals to be tagged regardless of production status. And so some do require those heifers to be tagged. And so you need to talk to your local extension office if you also plan to show her at the county fair to make sure you're meeting those requirements.
Okay, great. And that's all the questions we have so far.
Perfect. All right. And Kelsey, can you see the ShowWorks website? Since
Yes,
I
can.
changed with this. Okay, perfect. All right. So we are going to sign in. So this is the landing page. The link that I've been sending out, as well as the one that's on mine, this is the page that will take you to. And this white box If you will scroll down through it, these are the instructions. So if you're not sure about something, go ahead and read through the instructions. It also has some reminders. And we've also included the links. Like if you're like, oh, I don't think I did the declaration form, it's right here on the landing page. As well as you're like, oh, we're a new family, I didn't request a number yet. Go right here and request it. Now, granted, it will take you a while to get it back. So you could actually start, you could do it right here and then come back to the page later when you do get that number. So you're going to sign in. And if you are, once again, if you have more than one exhibitor, I would go ahead and do a quick group. And that's the example that I'm going to do. And if you only have one exhibitor, you could just do them as a plain exhibitor. But the quick group is going to make things a lot easier for you as a family because everything's kind of in one place. If you just do everyone as an exhibitor, it's going to do them as individuals. And so you won't have one place that has all of your kids' information in the same place. So we're going to do a quick group. And as you can see, I've already started a quick group, and we encourage you to use your official family name because there are some things that come through as your username on our end, and it's a lot easier for us to tie all of your information together. And it's also going to be easier for you and help you keep it straight, and also will help you remember what your official family name is if you go ahead and use it as your quick group name. And since I've already registered a family, I'm going to say I've previously registered, but it will take me to a confirmation page. So I'll show you what it'll look like if you are a new family. And so this is where if you're said I'm a new family, then it'll ask you to put in a password and create a password. And I'm going to say that an IT specialist would not suggest this, but if you want to use the same password for your family and your kids for the sake of remembering it, that's fine. The system will allow that. It's not going to kick you out if you try to use the same password for your kids and your family. And so go ahead and do that. But obviously we cannot encourage you using the same password you use for everything. But if you want to use the same one for this, for the family and the kids, that's fine. So you only have one to remember and not multiple. Email, I would encourage you to go ahead and put in this email address because later at the end, it's going to show up as your default email that they're going to send their receipt to. And also the default club is really helpful. At the beginning, we discussed using the club is either your county or your FFA chapter. And if you go ahead and put it in here, even though it's optional, then it will automatically populate on all your animals. And that's one less field that you'll have to fill in because it'll automatically default to it being the club that you assigned here. So if I wanted to edit something, for example, the email address, then I can edit it here by just saying edit, but everything is correct. So I'm going to hit continue, and we're going to add an exhibitor. And we are going to add a new child to the family. So you see all of it. I'm going to say this is a new exhibitor. And for those of you that maybe have done it before, it starts over at the beginning of every show year. And so even if you showed last year at the state fair and think you remember your login, it doesn't matter if you did a really good job remembering it because you need to go ahead and start as a new exhibitor for this year. And then once you log in the first time this year, then you'll say that you're a previous exhibitor who's already registered. So you're going to put in a password and the address. And as you can see, like a lot of browsers, once you put it in once, it's going to go ahead and pop up. So you can just tab past it if you have several kids to do. The other thing I'll mention is in this address too, if you have a PO box and you get your mail somewhere different than your physical address where you live, please put that in address too, so we can make sure that your mail is getting to you when we send things to you. Yes, I realize there's no Weber County, but that's the county that I use because otherwise Greg McClure would probably pull his hair out with the number of test animals that I've done if I put them under Riley. This needs to be a phone number that you can be easily contacted if we have questions, or even if we're at the show. So we would prefer this be a cell phone number. You're going to put in your email twice to make sure that you don't mistype it, and then the date of birth. For the child. And then your family name, and this is your official family name. You're going to include your extension agent or your FFA advisor if you're showing FFA, but it's whomever we need to contact that is affiliated with your organization if we should have questions. This is where that 5-digit KSU nomination number is going to go, as well as your Yqca certification number. So it's also important to point out that you have to have your Yqca number in order to get through this step. Now, if you are just wanting to order DNA envelopes and your kids haven't retaken their Yqca this year, you can use their current one, but only if you remember to go back and fix it later. If you submit all your nominations as final come June 15th, if you're showing pigs and you don't remember to edit this, then it'll come back as incomplete and you will have to go through the correction process. So if you're doing it for the sake of getting your DNA envelopes ordered early, because we've been encouraging you to do that, you just have to remember to go back and edit that when your child goes through the training and gets their new number. And we're going to pick our organization. You're going to say where your animals are kept. And when it asks about if you use the Passport app, this lets us know if you are using it, just so we have an idea of what communication methods we can use. I mentioned before, we could send individuals messages. So if there's something that we quickly want to let you know or have questions about, or suggest you check your email because we've sent you an email about your nominations, if we know that you're using the app, we can go ahead and send that message to you. So here has information about this exhibitor, and we're going to hit continue. The next step is going to be your entries. If you are wanting to just skip ahead and only order DNA envelopes because you don't know your tag numbers, maybe you don't have all of your sheep yet, or you don't have your Yqca yet, so you can't upload your certificate, then you can skip ahead. And here's where you do it. Even though this is the next step, this top bar right here is basically like a navigation bar to an extent. It lets you skip ahead. So if you're wanting to just order DNA envelopes, you're just going to click this 3 items and it will take you directly to putting in how many DNA envelopes you want. And then you can continue through the rest of the system without putting in tag numbers. But we are going to go back as if we're doing the process complete beginning to end. So we are going to pick a division. So we're going to do a market lamb. And you'll notice at the top, this information is specific information about sheep nominations. And again, we highly encourage you to read through this so you don't miss anything. That's meant to help you. And then you're going to choose the breed of your market lamb. You're going to put in the tag number. And that is the 5-digit visual number that you see on that 4-H tag. And you'll notice that the club's already populated. Here's where we're going to put the scrapey tag. And remember that it is the full scrapey tag. So the flock ID and the individual animal number. That was from our example earlier. Now, even though this is optional, I'm encouraging everyone to go ahead and use an animal name or whatever the kids call that animal, just because it'll make it easier later for you to quickly add this animal to other kids in your family or even other divisions. For example, if it's a ewe, we're going to go ahead and mark this as a ewe, and you want to show her as a market ewe at the state fair, but she's going to have to be shown as a breeding ewe at the junior livestock show. So you need to nominate her as a commercial U as well. This allows you to quickly add her to both divisions. And then you're going to say where this animal is kept. And then we're going to say add entry to cart. And you'll notice that a message pops up. And it says that in order to enter this division, you have documents that are required. So this is where you're going to put your declaration form and your Yqca certificate. And it will not let you continue on without doing this. So I would highly encourage you that if you do not have these documents ready, do not continue putting animals in, because you cannot fix this. You can't edit it. You can't come back. Also, do not upload bogus documents, because that makes it even harder for us to fix it for you if you upload fake documents. So please do not put anything fake in the system. So we're going to say, let's continue. And there's a page that opens and it's going to allow us to browse. We're going to do the Yqca certificate first. And it's going to be really important that when you save the certificates, make sure you include your kid's name so you get the right certificate with the right kid. So I'm going to go ahead and put my instructor certificate in here, and we're just going to tell it to upload. And then next is the declaration form. And here's our declaration form. And we're going to tell it to upload. Once we hit this done button, that's it. You can no longer edit these documents. So make sure that you put the right information in that you want and then hit done. And now when we say add entry to cart, it's going to let us do it to continue on. So we're going to add another entry. And so we're going to add that same lamb as a commercial U. So we're going to choose sheep, and we're going to choose commercial breeding ewes. And you'll notice that now I have this red button here that says autofill from previous. And if you hover over this, it automatically fills in. And just to me, I think if you use animal names, it's easy to quickly see what animal that is, if that's the one you're wanting to add. And I can just click it. I do have to choose commercial breeding use so it shows up in the right place and the nomination data. And then you're going to say add to cart, and then you're done adding that animal in 2 places. So we're going to say continue, and we're going to need 1 DNA envelope. So we would consider that a dual nominated animal. It's the same animal, but we're going to nominate it into 2 divisions. Still the same animal, so we only need 1 DNA envelope for it. And it doesn't matter if we have 1 kid in our family or if we have 10 kids in our family. Still, the DNA envelope is per animal, so we only need 1. And we'll just have all the kids sign it. So we're going to check out. Here is where you're going to put in your payment information. And I'm going to bypass that for the sake of showing an example. And here is the signature page. So you need to read this, because this is what you're agreeing to. You're agreeing that you're going to follow the nomination rules. You're agreeing you're going to follow all the state fair and junior livestock show rules, and that you understand there are penalties and consequences for not following the rules. So you need to make sure you read this so you know what you're signing. So by typing the word yes, you have signed it, and you're going to hit submit. And then you'll notice here's the confirmation. It says that it submitted it. So at this point, there is no editing that information. You need to check and make sure that this box has a blue check mark in it, because that's where it's going to send a copy of the receipt. And I will tell you that if it's the first time you've used ShowWorks, look in your spam folder. There's a good chance it'll go there the first time. And then after you click on it and open it, it'll start sending it to your inbox. So if you are concerned that you didn't get a receipt, look there. That's probably where it is. And you also can print a detailed receipt. So you just say you want to print it, and this is the copy that you are going to send with your nominations when you send in your completed DNA envelopes. So that's how you add an animal. If you are needing to add another kid to your family, you can easily do that. We'll go ahead and sign out. and add in another kid. And I'm going to add one in that we've already used before, and show an example of adding those same animals we just checked out to other kids in the family. So it's going to automatically show up. And you'll notice it goes on. It didn't ask me for any documents, and that's because this is an exhibitor who had already been created and already had animals entered under their name. So even if you enter a few animals and then you buy 2 more goats, you can go back in and add them to those kids. They will just show up on a different receipt, but it won't ask you for their documents again once you've done it the first time. And so if we're going to continue on, we don't need a DNA envelope since it was the same lamb that we already checked out a little bit ago under one of our other kids, same animal. So, and at this point, you're continuing through the checkout process. So with that, I am going to show you the Youth Livestock page where the nomination information is. So it's this link, this tab right here. And so this is the page that you want to bookmark if you haven't already. And you'll notice it has the deadlines. It has the DNA envelope order deadlines. This link right here is how do I skip ahead and get DNA envelopes without my tag numbers. So if you're wanting to order them tonight and you don't even have all your animals, but you have an idea how many you're going to purchase, then you could click that and it gives you step-by-step instructions on where to click to get through ordering those DNA envelopes. Has the link that we were just at with the instructions. So it's a PDF version of what's in that white box. This is all the important dates. Once we start getting a lot of nominations in this nominated livestock reports, we will post a list of everything that has been processed so far. So if you want to see if your nominations have made it, you can click this link and it will take you to each of the reports. We will probably start updating that. Right now it's blank. We will start doing that later this week as we get a bunch of market beef in, then we will start updating it every few days. If you aren't sure what your name or number are and you have nominated previously, this is the list that will show you what your name is. So you can just scroll through or do a search to find your name and number. Here's the important information, including the rookie guide. If you need to get your Yqca certification or sign up for a class, there's a direct link here. We've done several Zoom sessions over the nomination process. And so if you want to go back and watch that video as well, it's posted here as well as the checklist. And then down here is an overview of the 4-step process, as well as the instructions, the declaration form. If you can't find it, this is where it's located, as well as the request if you need a KSU nomination number. So at the bottom is where you'll find the ear notch and scrapey tag reading information. If you want a quick resource that's not in the rookie guide, you can find it here. And so with that, I think we're a little over our time. And so I want to be respectful of your time and I will open it to any other questions there may be. Once again, like I mentioned at the beginning, if you come up with a question in the next couple of days, you're like, oh, I should have asked her that. Please don't hesitate, call or email, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you and get those questions answered, especially sooner rather than later. I know I sound like a broken record this year, but I cannot reinforce enough how important it is to plan ahead this year, and especially getting those DNA envelopes ordered as early as possible and getting those forms done early. So then all you have to do is put in your tag numbers, pull your DNA, and mail it back in. All right.
Okay. We're going to just check one last time for any last minute questions, and I don't see any. Once again, we'd like to thank Lexi for joining us this evening and explaining the nomination process. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email Lexi directly. You can also email those to me and I can make sure that she gets those. We will post the replay of this to the Kansas 4-H Animal Science Project page. It'll be the same place where you found the registration link. We do ask that you go and complete the survey following watching this, whether you participated live or watched the recording. That just helps us to evaluate what we're providing to everyone and make sure that we're providing things to our Kansas 4-Hers that helps to serve them. So once again, thank you, Lexi, for joining us, and thank you to all of you as well. We will see you next month for the next installment of the Kansas 4-H Animal Science webinar.